As the sun dipped behind the red-tiled roofs of Königsberg, the Pregel River reflected streaks of gold and orange across its rippling surface. Wooden barges creaked gently against the stone quays, their cargoes of timber and salt shifting with every sway. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys, carrying the scent of burning peat and freshly baked bread into the narrow streets. Children, unaware of the world's complications, ran along the cobblestones, their laughter echoing beneath the 7 bridges that connected the islands of the city. Merchants shouted their last deals of the day, voices mingling with the distant tolling of the cathedral bells, creating a symphony that was uniquely Königsberg. Nestled between a bakery and a tailor's shop was a small, unassuming door, above which hung a carved wooden sign, Johann Albrecht, Clockmaker. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood, oil, and faint traces of metal filings. Gears, springs, and pendulums were scattered across the workbenches, some still ticking softly, others silent in the pause between construction and completion. Johann, a man of medium height with greying hair streaked with soot, bent over a delicate escapement, adjusting its teeth with painstaking precision. His hands moved with the calm assurance of decades spent perfecting a craft that married both art and science. He paused to glance out the window at the last ferry crossing, where lanterns shimmered like fireflies on the darkening water. A knock at the workshop door interrupted Johann's concentration. A tall, foreign merchant, his cloak damp from the evening mist, stepped inside, producing a rolled parchment. "Master Albrecht," he said, his voice a low, urgent whisper, "I've heard of your skill. I need a clock that can measure not just time, but direction." Johann raised an eyebrow, intrigued. The merchant unrolled the parchment to reveal a map of distant lands and treacherous seas, annotated with calculations that hinted at early forms of navigation. Johann ran his finger along the lines, feeling the weight of centuries of trade and exploration compressed into ink and parchment. Johann leaned back in his wooden chair, the soft tick-tock of his smaller clocks filling the silence between words. "A clock that measures direction," he murmured, more to himself than to the merchant. Outside, the river swelled with the incoming tide, as if nature itself had paused to witness the exchange. After a long pause, Johann nodded slowly. "It can be done," he said, "but it will require patience, precision, and understanding that stretches beyond mere mechanics." The merchant's eyes lit with hope and fear intertwined, knowing that failure could mean the loss of fortune, or worse. Johann returned to his workbench, already imagining the first gear, the first pivot that would make the impossible tangible. By the time midnight had fallen over Königsberg, the city was quiet, save for the occasional splash of water against a pier. Johann sat at his desk, quill in hand, sketching diagrams that twisted and turned like the labyrinth of the city itself. His mind wandered through the physics of pendulums, the geometry of circles, and the emerging theories of magnetism. Candlelight flickered against the walls, casting long shadows over stacks of books and scattered schematics. In that solitude, Johann felt a rare clarity, a sense that he was on the verge of something that might change navigation, and perhaps the fate of countless sailors. He scribbled calculations until the candle burned low, its flame bowing like a tiny dancer in the night. The next morning, Johann paused his work to watch the comings and goings on the central bridge. Old Herr Weber, the bridge keeper, shuffled past, carrying tales of foggy mornings and missing cargoes, of merchants who had lost their way even in familiar streets. Johann listened with half an ear, observing how people interacted with the city's labyrinthine geography. 7 bridges, each a lifeline, yet each capable of confusing and misleading. The city itself was a puzzle, and Johann, in some quiet, deliberate way, intended to create a device that could untangle mysteries far larger than bridges and streets, mysteries that lay across oceans. For weeks, Johann worked tirelessly. Springs were tempered, gears meticulously ground, and dials calibrated to fractions of a millimeter. Each component was tested and retested, the mechanisms nested like Russian dolls. Some nights, he dreamt of the clocks speaking to him in gears and cogs, whispering solutions to problems that had stumped the greatest minds of the age. The townspeople, curious about the strange noises emanating from his workshop, speculated wildly. Some said Johann had struck a deal with a spirit. Others claimed he sought to predict the stars themselves. Johann paid little heed, absorbed in the harmony of mathematics and motion. Finally, a prototype was ready. Johann set the device on a table by the window overlooking the Pregel. He adjusted a small lever, and the clock's tiny compass wheel quivered before locking steadily in a single direction. Johann stepped back, heart pounding, and watched as the pendulum swung with an almost human rhythm, guiding the pointer along a line that promised precision beyond anything he had imagined. Outside, gulls cried, and the wind carried the faint scent of distant forests and salt water. Johann realized that his creation was more than a clock. It was a key, a promise of exploration and discovery that had never existed before. As dusk settled over the city, the merchant returned, eyes wide with anticipation. Johann demonstrated the mechanism, showing how it could guide a ship not just by time, but by bearing and course. The merchant's expression was one of disbelief mixed with elation. This could change everything, he whispered. Johann nodded silently, aware of the weight of those words. Beyond the walls of Königsberg, beyond the rivers and bridges, this small invention might ripple across continents, touching lives in ways neither of them could fully imagine. Yet for Johann, the satisfaction lay not in fame or fortune, but in the perfection of craft, the beauty of motion, and the quiet triumph of human ingenuity. The city lights shimmered in the dark waters of the Pregel as Johann closed his workshop for the night. He leaned against the doorway, feeling the cool wind on his face, listening to the distant echoes of life carried across the bridges. The clock lay silent inside, waiting for its first real voyage, a sleeping sentinel of discovery. Johann's thoughts drifted like the river, flowing through ideas of maps yet to be drawn, journeys yet to be taken. Outside, Königsberg slept, oblivious to the quiet revolution unfolding in a single room by the river. A revolution built not of swords or gold, but of gears, patience, and the ceaseless curiosity of one man's mind. The next morning, Königsberg stirred slowly beneath a pale, misty sun. Water from the canals lapped softly against the quay walls, carrying faint scents of fish, timber, and whetstone. Johann walked along the narrow streets, observing the city with a watchful eye. Merchants laid out barrels of herring and salted meat, while the clatter of wooden wheels on cobblestones signaled the arrival of carts from distant villages. As he passed the old university gates, Johann paused to glance at the students, whose youthful energy and debates about geometry and astronomy reminded him of why he had first become fascinated with the movement of the stars and the mechanics of time. Every corner of Königsberg seemed alive with its own rhythm, a network of motion, patterns, and secrets waiting to be understood. Back in his workshop, Johann discovered a letter carefully slipped under the door. The parchment was thin and fragrant with a foreign oil, sealed with an intricate wax insignia he did not recognize. Breaking the seal, he read a short, precise message. "Your invention is known to the Prussian Admiralty. They request your presence in Berlin. Prepare for urgent instructions." Johann's pulse quickened. The Prussian Admiralty had long been an elusive power, directing trade, war, and exploration across the Baltic and beyond. To be summoned was both an honor and a danger. Carefully, he rolled the parchment and placed it in his pocket, knowing that this journey would carry him far beyond the familiar bridges and canals of Königsberg. For the first time in months, Johann left the comforting clutter of his workshop to prepare for travel. He packed tools, blueprints, and delicate components of his navigational clock with painstaking care. Each gear and spring was wrapped in soft linen like precious jewels. As he packed, he reflected on the countless hours spent refining the mechanism, testing pendulums, and calibrating dials. He realized that this journey was not merely about showing his work. It was a test of human ingenuity, courage, and trust. When he finally secured the last piece, the workshop felt emptier than ever. The clocks ticked on, oblivious to their creator's absence, as if acknowledging the start of a new chapter. Johann left Königsberg at dawn, crossing the central bridge where he paused to watch the river mist rise like a ghostly curtain. Gulls wheeled overhead, their cries echoing off stone towers. A small ferry carried him to the opposite bank, its wooden boards creaking underfoot. As he looked back, the city's 7 bridges disappeared into a hazy distance, and with them, the familiar world of his workshop. The river, once a companion in thought, now marked the beginning of uncertainty. Each stroke of the oars reminded him that life, like his clocks, moved in steady, deliberate steps, but with unpredictable currents beneath. The first stop on his journey was a small inn along the trade road to Berlin. Johann sat in the common room, sharing a wooden table with merchants, soldiers, and travelers, all exchanging stories in the rough, melodic dialects of the region. A young sailor, noticing the intricate sketches poking from Johann's satchel, asked quietly, "Are those charts for sailing, sir?" Johann smiled without revealing too much. "Only a way to understand the world better," he replied. That night, by candlelight, Johann reviewed his designs, ensuring that every calculation was precise. The chatter of the inn faded into a quiet hum, and he slept with the rhythmic tick of a small clock echoing in his mind. Along the journey, Johann encountered sailors who spoke of storms in the Gulf of Finland, pirates near Gotland, and currents that could swallow a ship whole. Each story added urgency to his work. He realized that his clock was not just an invention, it was a lifeline. Lives would depend on the accuracy of gears and springs, the balance of pendulums, and the clarity of its dials. Nights by the fire were filled with debates about navigation, astronomy, and the mysteries of magnetic variation. Johann absorbed each story, each warning, shaping the clock not merely as a mechanism, but as a testament to the fragile, interconnected world of sailors and merchants. On clear nights, Johann would lie on the riverbank, watching the stars reflected in the water. He considered the teachings of Copernicus, the observations of Kepler, and the calculations of Tycho Brahe. The heavens were a vast clockwork themselves, and he was a humble observer trying to mirror their precision in his own work. The reflection of constellations dancing on the river's surface reminded him that every movement in the world, from a ship's rudder to a clock's escapement, was interconnected. By understanding one, he might understand the other. After days of travel through winding forests, rolling fields, and small towns echoing with the rhythms of daily life, Johann finally arrived in Berlin. The city, with its imposing gates and bustling markets, seemed larger, louder, and more chaotic than Königsberg. Carriages rattled over cobblestones, and merchants' cries mingled with church bells. Johann's heart raced as he approached the Admiralty offices, a building of stone and authority where decisions were made that could shape kingdoms. He took a deep breath, adjusting the satchel on his shoulder, and stepped inside, greeted by the precise, purposeful bustle of military clerks and naval officers. Inside the Grand Chamber, maps of the Baltic and North Seas covered the walls. Admirals and engineers discussed trade routes, naval defenses, and the challenges of navigation with animated gestures. Johann was escorted to a smaller room where the Admiral himself awaited. A man of stern countenance but sharp intellect, the Admiral examined Johann's sketches and prototype with quiet curiosity. "This is unlike anything I have seen," he said. "If it functions as you claim, it could revolutionize our voyages." Johann nodded humbly, aware of both the weight of responsibility and the trust placed in him. Outside the window, Berlin's rooftops glinted in the late afternoon sun, as if acknowledging the birth of possibility. A small naval vessel was prepared for testing Johann's navigational clock. The ship's captain, a grizzled man named Friedrich, was skeptical but willing to try. As the vessel left port, Johann carefully set the clock's dials and observed the compass wheel respond. The city faded behind them, replaced by the endless expanse of water. Waves rocked the ship gently, and gulls cried overhead. Johann felt both exhilaration and fear. The clock would be measured not by theory, but by reality. Every swing of the pendulum, every turn of the gear, was now a matter of life and death. By nightfall, under a sky full of stars, the small device proved its worth, pointing true even as currents threatened to mislead them. Johann knew then that his work had moved from craft to legend. The ship docked back at Berlin with a quiet triumph. Johann stepped onto the quay, the salt scent of the Baltic clinging to his cloak. Sailors and dock workers glanced curiously at the small clock he carried like a talisman, its polished brass reflecting the morning light. Word of the successful trial had already begun to spread through the Admiralty. Officers whispered about a device that could guide ships even in the most treacherous conditions. Johann felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. He understood that while the clock worked, the challenges of human error, superstition, and politics remained far greater than any mechanical flaw. Word of Johann's invention reached the University of Berlin. Curious scholars requested demonstrations, their debates ranging from the theory of tides to the celestial movements above. Professors argued, gesturing at maps and globes, whether the clock's mechanism might eventually replace traditional compasses and sextants. Johann listened patiently, occasionally sketching new refinements, aware that his work had entered a realm of intellectual fascination beyond the simple streets of Königsberg. Late into the night, candlelight flickered over parchment and gears, while outside, Berlin's rooftops slept under a canopy of stars, witnessing the quiet revolution of knowledge taking root. One morning, a courier arrived with news from his hometown. Königsberg had not forgotten its clockmaker. The letter contained sketches from young apprentices, inspired by Johann's work, and words of admiration from old friends. They wrote of bridges illuminated by lanterns and markets thriving under the calm rhythm of the river. Johann felt a pang of nostalgia and an even deeper sense of purpose. His invention had become more than a tool. It was a symbol of possibility, a reminder that meticulous care and patient study could ripple outward to touch lives far beyond the walls of a small workshop. The Admiral summoned Johann once more, his face stern. "The seas are not the only danger," he said. "There are rivals who would see this invention fall into the wrong hands, who would use it for war or to dominate trade routes." Johann listened, understanding the gravity. His clock, a creation of patience and intellect, could become an instrument of power with consequences he had never intended. He realized that invention carried responsibility as heavy as the weight of its gears. Every decision now required careful thought, balancing curiosity, ambition, and the fragile ethics of human endeavor. Weeks later, Johann sailed again, this time with the Admiral's officers and a small contingent of scholars. The ship ventured farther into the Baltic, encountering fog, unpredictable winds, and the uncertain pull of the currents. Johann's clock worked flawlessly, guiding the vessel along courses that had once seemed impossible to chart. Night after night, he compared its readings to the stars, refining each adjustment with meticulous care. The scholars observed in awe, recognizing that Johann's work might form the foundation for a new era of navigation, where human skill and mechanical precision worked together to explore a wider, more accurate world. One evening, a storm rose without warning over the Gulf of Finland. Waves surged, wind tore at sails, and lightning illuminated the dark horizon. Sailors struggled to maintain course, fear etching lines on weathered faces. Johann clutched the clock, watching the compass wheel spin, yet steadily correct itself. Time and motion became his allies, a dance of physics and courage. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving broken masts and scattered cargo, but no loss of life. Johann realized that this fragile mechanism, born of quiet nights in Königsberg, had proven itself in the raw, unpredictable power of nature. Back in Berlin, Johann was honored with a modest ceremony. Admirals, scholars, and merchants gathered to witness the clock's precision, and letters of acknowledgement arrived from distant cities. Yet Johann remained humble, his mind already returning to the small workshop along the Pregel, where his creation had begun. He thought of the apprentices, the bridge keeper, and the children running along cobblestones, unaware that one man's quiet curiosity had reached beyond the bridges and canals of their city to touch the wider world. Recognition mattered little. The joy was in understanding, in creation, and in the quiet rhythm of perfect motion. Among the scholars was a young mathematician named Wilhelm, fascinated by the integration of timekeeping and navigation. He questioned Johann endlessly, tracing the pendulum's swing and the escapement's motion. Johann encouraged him, knowing that the true legacy of discovery lay not in a single invention, but in inspiring minds to ask questions and pursue knowledge. Wilhelm sketched furiously, already imagining improvements and applications far beyond what Johann had envisioned. Their conversations stretched into the night, blending philosophy, mathematics, and the poetry of motion itself. Returning to Königsberg, Johann reopened his workshop with a quiet contentment. The streets were unchanged, yet the city felt different, as if acknowledging its role in nurturing discovery. He walked among the bridges, feeling the pulse of the river beneath his feet, reflecting on the journey, the storm, and the far-reaching influence of his clock. In the evenings, he would sit by the window, small prototype clocks ticking softly beside him, and think of the vast, unseen consequences of precise motion, human ingenuity, and curiosity. A reminder that even the smallest ideas could ripple across oceans and centuries. As night fell over Königsberg, Johann extinguished his candles and stepped outside. Lanterns glowed along the quays, the river mirrored the stars, and the city breathed in quiet anticipation. In the stillness, Johann imagined distant sailors, explorers, and scholars, all guided by the subtle, tireless movement of gears and pendulums he had so lovingly crafted. The world felt both immense and intimate, connected by motion, measurement, and human endeavor. And as he drifted to sleep, the soft ticking of clocks seemed to echo the infinite rhythm of life itself, promising that curiosity, patience, and wonder could illuminate even the darkest nights. The sun rose slowly over Königsberg, its rays glinting off the 7 bridges that connected the city's islands. Johann walked along the cobblestones, observing the rhythm of the day. Merchants unloading barrels, children chasing each other through narrow alleys, and the gentle swell of the Pregel River beneath the arches. Each bridge seemed alive, carrying not just people and goods, but stories, discoveries, and the quiet pulse of human ambition. Johann paused mid-step, reflecting on how his life, like the bridges, connected the practical and the philosophical, the tangible mechanisms of clocks and the abstract patterns of life and motion. One afternoon, a young boy named Leon approached Johann's workshop. His eyes were wide with curiosity, and he clutched a scrap of paper covered in sketches and numbers. "I want to understand the bridges," Leon said, pointing toward the islands. "I want to find a way to cross each one without repeating." Johann smiled, recognizing the spark of inquiry he himself had felt decades ago. He invited Leon inside, showing him maps, diagrams, and small mechanical models. As Leon traced the paths with his finger, Johann realized that teaching curiosity was as important as crafting machines. Knowledge, after all, grew when shared. Leon's fascination led Johann to recount a question that had puzzled Königsberg's citizens for years. Could one cross all 7 bridges without stepping on the same bridge twice? Johann sketched the city's islands and bridges, noting the flow of the river and the connection of each arch. He encouraged Leon to think of the problem not in terms of the streets themselves, but as abstract points and lines, a methodical approach that would later influence mathematicians across Europe. The boy listened intently, tracing patterns, making connections, and learning that sometimes the world could be understood as both concrete and abstract at the same time. As evening fell, Johann returned to his workshop, the air thick with the smell of wax and wood polish. He placed a small navigational clock on the windowsill, watching its pendulum swing in perfect rhythm. Outside, the bridges cast long shadows across the river, and the city's lights twinkled like distant stars. Johann reflected on the intertwining of his life's work, the mechanical and the conceptual. The clocks he had made measured time and direction, while the bridges of Königsberg suggested problems of connectivity and logic. Both, he realized, were attempts to bring order to complexity, to find clarity in a world that often seemed chaotic. In the weeks that followed, scholars from distant cities arrived to learn from Johann. Some were navigators seeking to improve maritime travel. Others were mathematicians curious about the patterns hidden in the city's layout. Johann welcomed them all, demonstrating clocks, sketches, and diagrams while emphasizing the importance of observation and patience. Each visitor left with a sense of wonder, carrying seeds of innovation back to their own cities. Johann found satisfaction not in recognition, but in witnessing the spread of knowledge, like ripples across the surface of a calm river. One rainy afternoon, Johann shared tea with an elderly mathematician who had studied the problem of the bridges. The man spoke softly, almost reverently. "Your clocks measure time, Johann, but these bridges, they measure thought. They teach us about order, structure, and possibility." Johann listened, understanding that the city itself, its paths, bridges, and rhythms, was a teacher just as much as his clocks. The lesson was subtle but profound. The world could be mapped, understood, and even predicted, but only by combining careful observation with imagination and insight. As night descended, Johann walked along the riverbank, lantern in hand. Mist rose from the water, curling around the arches of the bridges like spirits of the past. The city was silent, except for the gentle lapping of the river and the distant call of an owl. Johann reflected on how far his work had reached, from the quiet hours in his workshop to sailors guided across treacherous seas, to scholars pondering abstract patterns in Königsberg itself. Each swing of a pendulum, each line on a map, was part of a larger story of curiosity, exploration, and human ingenuity. Johann received letters from students and admirers, some of whom had begun to experiment with their own mechanical devices and mathematical puzzles. The young minds he inspired were tackling problems he had only hinted at, extending his influence beyond time and geography. Johann realized that while he had measured hours and directions, the true measure of his work was the spark it ignited in others, the curiosity that pushed people to ask, what if and how? It was in these letters, small and delicate, that Johann saw the lasting impact of a lifetime devoted to observation and creation. One evening, Johann sat alone by candlelight, sketching improvements to his clocks and noting the patterns of the bridges. Shadows danced on the walls, echoing the movement of gears and the flow of water beneath the arches. He felt a profound peace, understanding that life's complexities, like the river, the city, and the machines he had built, could be approached with patience, care, and clarity. Each day brought new challenges, new discoveries, but also the quiet reassurance that knowledge, once cultivated, could illuminate paths far beyond one person's lifetime. As night fell over Königsberg, Johann extinguished his candles and listened to the soft tick of clocks and the gentle river beneath the bridges. The city slept, unaware of the profound interplay of mechanics, mathematics, and thought that had quietly taken root. Johann closed his eyes, dreaming of rivers, bridges, stars, and gears, feeling the rhythm of time itself. He understood in that quiet moment that human curiosity, when nurtured with care, patience, and observation, was as enduring as the city's arches, as infinite as the river's flow, and as precise as the mechanism of a well-crafted clock. Years passed, and Johann's reputation spread beyond Königsberg and Berlin. Letters arrived from mathematicians and philosophers across Europe, Vienna, Paris, and London, inquiring about his clocks, their precision, and the principles behind his navigation methods. Each envelope carried a faint scent of ink and wax, and Johann read them carefully, noting questions about timing, direction, and logic. He replied with sketches, calculations, and gentle encouragement, emphasizing careful observation, patience, and reasoning. It amazed him how a simple mechanism, born of hours in a quiet workshop, had become a bridge between cities, minds, and ideas. One evening, Johann walked along the banks of the Pregel River, watching the sunlight shimmer on the water. The bridges, so familiar yet endlessly fascinating, reminded him of the abstract patterns he had once discussed with young Leon. Each arch and pathway formed a network, a puzzle waiting for minds to decipher. Johann realized that the principles he applied to his clocks, the interplay of gears, timing, and balance, were mirrored in the city itself. Life, time, and motion were not separate, but part of a single, intricate system that could be understood if approached with curiosity and rigor. One day, a young mathematician named Leonhard arrived from Zurich, carrying books, diagrams, and questions that challenged Johann in ways he had not experienced before. Leonhard was fascinated by the bridges and the concept of movement through a network without repetition. Johann shared his sketches and ideas, encouraging him to think abstractly, to consider nodes and connections rather than just streets and bridges. They spent days mapping Königsberg's bridges, drawing lines and contemplating possibilities. Johann realized that his work had become a stepping stone, sparking a new wave of mathematical thinking that would eventually lead to concepts far beyond his time. In the quiet hours of the evening, Johann gathered a small group of apprentices in his workshop. The clocks ticked softly, the brass gears reflecting the warm candlelight. He taught them not just mechanics, but observation, reasoning, and imagination. Each apprentice followed the movements of pendulums, traced patterns of gears, and sketched connections among the city's bridges. Johann watched as young minds began to see patterns where he had seen only paths, possibilities where he had seen obstacles. He understood that his greatest legacy would not be the clocks themselves, but the spark of curiosity and the methods of disciplined thought he instilled. On a particularly still night, Johann lay awake in his small room overlooking the river. The bridges were silhouetted against the starry sky, their reflections forming endless loops in the water. He thought about the vastness of knowledge, the invisible lines connecting people, ideas, and discoveries across time. The clock's pendulum ticked softly in the corner, each swing a reminder of the universe's order and rhythm. Johann felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that understanding, even if partial, was a gift to be shared. Patterns, motion, and curiosity could endure, shaping lives long after one person's hands had grown tired. Leonhard, inspired by Johann's guidance, eventually published his work on abstract connections, formalizing ideas that stemmed from the bridges of Königsberg. He credited Johann in his writings, acknowledging the clockmaker's role in inspiring not just a mechanical invention, but a method of thinking. The work caught the attention of mathematicians across Europe, laying the groundwork for what would later be called graph theory. Johann, now older, read these letters with a quiet pride. His small workshop, filled with clocks and sketches, had contributed to a new language of mathematics, a language of connections, nodes, and motion. On calm evenings, Johann returned to the river, observing the lights of Königsberg dancing across the water. He thought about sailors guided by his clocks, students inspired by his teaching, and mathematicians building new concepts from his insights. The city, with its bridges, streets, and flowing river, seemed to pulse with quiet wisdom. Johann understood that invention and discovery were not solitary pursuits. They were dialogues across time, spaces, and minds. The simple act of observing, sketching, and experimenting could echo through centuries, shaping the understanding of generations yet unborn. Johann continued mentoring apprentices and scholars, always emphasizing patience, curiosity, and disciplined observation. He encouraged them to explore mechanical precision, patterns in nature, and abstract thinking. Each student left with a sense of purpose, carrying not only knowledge, but the methods to uncover new truths. Johann realized that the future of discovery lay not in his hands alone, but in the minds he had nurtured. He found joy in witnessing the blossoming of ideas, the quiet revolution of understanding spreading silently through Königsberg and beyond. As night fell, Johann sat among clocks of all sizes, their synchronized ticking filling the room with a meditative rhythm. Outside, the bridges of Königsberg glimmered under lantern light, mirroring the stars above. He reflected on a lifetime of observation, invention, and teaching. Each clock, each sketch, each discussion with a student had become a thread in a vast, intricate web. Knowledge, he realized, was like a river. It flowed continuously, touching distant shores, shaping minds, and carrying the stories of those who dared to understand. Before retiring for the night, Johann placed a small clock on the windowsill, its pendulum swinging steadily. He looked at the bridges, the river, and the city he loved, feeling a profound connection between time, motion, and human thought. As he drifted into sleep, he imagined the countless minds that would follow, guided by curiosity, observation, and careful reasoning. His work, clocks, sketches, teachings, and ideas, was now part of a greater rhythm, a legacy flowing quietly through the centuries. The city slept, the river flowed, and Johann's curiosity endured, like a gentle, persistent tick echoing across time. The city of Königsberg had taken on the muted tones of autumn. Leaves fell slowly along the cobblestones, swirling in the wind like golden sparks. Johann walked among the bridges, noting the interplay of shadow and light across the river. The sound of the water, steady and unhurried, reminded him of the steady beat of his clocks, each tick marking not just hours, but the accumulation of a lifetime's discoveries. Merchants prepared for the approaching winter. Children chased one another through the narrow alleys, and the air carried a faint chill. Johann paused, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of years and the quiet satisfaction of a life devoted to understanding. Letters continued to arrive from scholars and navigators across Europe, praising Johann's invention and its implications. One letter from Paris described how a ship, guided by principles he had shared, had successfully navigated treacherous currents that had previously claimed lives and cargo. Another, from London, recounted a mathematical society intrigued by patterns in the bridges of Königsberg. Johann read each with quiet pride, aware that his clocks and teachings had transcended borders, influencing minds and voyagers alike. Knowledge, he realized, was a living thing, flowing between people, cities, and oceans, unstoppable yet gentle. As dusk fell, Johann returned to his workshop, the familiar scent of polished wood and brass greeting him like an old friend. He carefully wound each clock, checking their mechanisms one final time for the day. Outside, the river shimmered in fading light, and the 7 bridges seemed to hum with a quiet energy. Johann reflected on the delicate interplay between his creations and the broader world. The clocks measured not only time, but also the rhythm of human endeavor, guiding sailors and thinkers alike. Each gear, each pendulum, was a testament to patience, observation, and the enduring power of curiosity. One evening, a young apprentice lingered as Johann prepared to leave. "Master," the boy asked softly, "do you think we will ever understand all the patterns of the world?" Johann smiled, placing a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "Perhaps not all," he replied, "but understanding even a small part brings clarity, and with clarity the world becomes less daunting and more beautiful. Curiosity is endless, but each discovery illuminates a path for those who follow." The boy nodded, eyes wide, and Johann felt a quiet warmth in knowing that the spark of curiosity would continue beyond his own hands and mind. That night, Johann walked along the riverbank, the stars mirrored perfectly in the calm water below. The bridges glowed faintly in lantern light, their reflections forming infinite patterns in the river. He thought of the sailors guided by his clocks, the scholars inspired by his teachings, and the abstract ideas that had emerged from the simple layout of his city. Time, motion, and human ingenuity were interconnected, like the constellations above. Johann understood, more deeply than ever, that the world could be observed, measured, and understood, but also that mystery, like the night sky, remained vast and beautiful. An officer from the Admiralty arrived with a small delegation, bringing news of further interest in Johann's navigational clocks. The officer spoke with admiration, noting that ships guided by Johann's principles were traveling farther and more safely than ever before. Johann responded with quiet humility, emphasizing that the real achievement lay not in the mechanism itself, but in the careful application of observation, patience, and reason. The officer nodded, understanding that Johann's influence extended beyond machines to the cultivation of disciplined thought. Winter crept into Königsberg, frost forming delicate patterns on window panes and coating the bridges with a fine, glittering layer. Johann spent more time in his workshop, refining clocks, sketching, and mentoring apprentices. The cold outside did not diminish the warmth within, as the rhythmic ticking of countless clocks filled the room. Johann realized that knowledge, like the river beneath the ice, flowed steadily and persistently, shaping the world quietly, almost imperceptibly, yet with undeniable force. Sitting by candlelight one evening, Johann reflected on the trajectory of his life. From a curious boy in Königsberg to a master clockmaker whose work had influenced navigation, mathematics, and teaching, he saw the delicate interplay of observation, ingenuity, and human connection. His clocks had guided sailors across seas. His sketches and insights had inspired minds to think abstractly about patterns, connections, and possibilities. In this quiet moment, Johann understood that the essence of discovery lay not in accolades or fame, but in the act of observing, questioning, and passing knowledge forward. The city settled under a blanket of snow. the bridges silent except for the occasional footsteps of late travelers. Johann walked through the empty streets, reflecting on the countless lives that had passed through Königsberg, the rhythms of commerce and curiosity, and the beauty of patterns both seen and unseen. He knew that the bridges, the clocks, and the river were more than infrastructure or mechanisms. They were symbols of connection, inquiry, and persistence. Each tick of a clock and each arch of a bridge was a testament to human effort, patience, and imagination. As night fell, Johann returned to his workshop for the last time that evening. He wound a small clock, its pendulum swinging steadily, echoing the rhythm of a life lived in careful observation and creation. Outside, the bridges of Königsberg shimmered beneath lantern light, reflecting the infinite possibilities of movement, time, and thought. Johann lay down, closing his eyes with a quiet smile, knowing that his work, his clocks, teachings, and the inspiration he had fostered would endure. Sleep embraced him, and in that quiet moment, the city, the river, and the bridges all seemed to pulse with the persistent, gentle rhythm of human curiosity. The winter sun glinted off the Pregel River, casting long reflections across the 7 bridges of Königsberg. Johann walked slowly along the quays, his breath forming clouds in the crisp air. Though his hair had greyed and his hands bore the marks of decades spent bending metal and refining gears, his eyes retained the spark of curiosity that had guided him through years of invention and exploration. Each bridge, each arch, reminded him of the lessons learned: observation, patience, and the power of patterns. The city itself seemed to pulse with knowledge, each stone and beam a teacher for those willing to notice. Letters continued to arrive, now more scholarly than practical. Mathematicians and philosophers wrote to Johann, intrigued by the abstract implications of his observations about Königsberg's bridges. They asked questions about connectivity, movement, and possibilities, unknowingly planting the seeds of what would later become graph theory. Johann responded carefully, encouraging experimentation and thought, but leaving enough ambiguity to ensure that the minds of his correspondents were challenged. It delighted him to see how a city, its bridges, and his patient observation could inspire ideas far beyond geography or mechanics. Leon, now older and more confident, returned frequently to Johann's workshop. Together, they examined gears, pendulums, and the patterns of motion in both clocks and bridges. Johann encouraged him to think abstractly, connecting ideas from mechanics to mathematics. Leon's sketches became increasingly sophisticated, exploring not just motion and time, but networks, connections, and systems. Johann saw in Leon the continuation of his work, the living proof that curiosity and careful observation could be passed from one mind to another, growing in complexity and influence. One quiet evening, Johann sat by the river, watching the bridges cast long shadows over the water. He thought about the broader meaning of his work. The clocks measured time, guiding sailors and explorers. The bridges suggested patterns of connection, inspiring abstract thought. Both, he realized, were ways of bringing order and understanding to a world that often seemed chaotic. Human curiosity, patience, and ingenuity had the power to reveal hidden patterns and, in doing so, transform the world in ways both practical and philosophical. A traveler arrived from Vienna, a mathematician who had heard of Johann's work and the peculiar patterns of Königsberg's bridges. The man marveled at the careful observation Johann had recorded, noting how the city itself could be seen as a network of nodes and edges. Johann demonstrated his sketches, explaining how people could move through the city without retracing paths. The visitor left inspired, already imagining applications in mathematics, engineering, and navigation. Johann watched him go, quietly satisfied that his observations had transcended the immediate world of rivers and bridges touching minds across Europe. By candlelight, Johann examined his clocks, noting the gentle swing of each pendulum. Each tick was a reminder of a lifetime of precision, patience, and careful attention. Outside, Königsberg slept, the bridges casting delicate reflections in the calm river. Johann realized that his legacy was not the devices themselves, nor the fame or recognition, but the spread of ideas. How careful observation could inspire abstract thought, exploration, and understanding. The rhythm of clocks, the patterns of bridges, and the flow of the river were interconnected, a metaphor for the infinite connections of knowledge itself. The lanterns on the bridges glowed faintly against the winter night, mirrored perfectly in the river below. Johann walked slowly across, thinking of the countless travelers, merchants, and students who had crossed them, each following paths both known and unknown. He imagined how these simple structures, so ordinary in daily life, would later inspire theorems and abstract reasoning, showing that even the most mundane aspects of human life could contain profound lessons. The city, quiet and still, seemed to honor the subtle interplay of thought, motion, and observation. Time continued its steady march, and Johann grew older. His hands, once nimble and precise, began to tire, yet his mind remained sharp. He continued teaching, mentoring, and observing, always patient, always curious. He watched students and apprentices grow into thinkers, explorers, and innovators, realizing that knowledge was alive. It moved, expanded, and evolved. The bridges and clocks were his teachers and companions, symbols of connection, rhythm, and discovery. Johann received letters from scholars who were formalizing the study of networks, movement, and connections. Though the term graph theory would not be coined for another century, his observations of Königsberg's bridges and their patterns were cited as foundational. Johann read these letters quietly, feeling the satisfaction of a life spent in patient observation, invention, and teaching. He understood that true legacy was not immediate recognition, but enduring influence, a gentle ripple across time and space. On his final night in Königsberg, Johann walked along the river, lantern in hand. The 7 bridges reflected in the water like a constellation of human endeavor. He paused, taking in the quiet majesty of the city, the rhythm of the river, and the infinite possibilities suggested by the interplay of bridges, clocks, and observation. Lying in bed later, the gentle ticking of a clock beside him, Johann drifted into sleep. His dreams were filled with rivers, stars, bridges, and the movement of gears, a quiet testament to curiosity, patience, and the enduring power of human thought. In that serene night, the city, the river, and the bridges all seemed to pulse in harmony with his legacy, a rhythm that would endure long after his time. Königsberg awoke to a soft winter sun reflecting off the frozen sections of the Pregel River. Smoke curled from chimneys, and merchants began setting up their stalls with careful precision, mindful of the crisp morning. Johann, now older but still resolute, walked along the bridges, feeling the familiar sway beneath his feet. Each arch, each span of wood and stone had become more than infrastructure. It was a symbol of connection and possibility. He reflected that time, like the river, flowed steadily, carrying moments and memories, discoveries and inventions along its course. In his workshop, Johann focused on his final clock, a creation that combined decades of observation, design, and innovation. Its brass gears were polished to a warm glow, the pendulum swinging with perfect rhythm. He adjusted it carefully, noting the precision of each tick, aware that it symbolized more than hours. It embodied patience, curiosity, and the human drive to understand. Johann placed the clock near the window, where the light from the river illuminated the brass and reflected off the polished wood. In its steady motion, he saw a reflection of life itself, deliberate, persistent, and interconnected. Letters arrived from scholars, navigators, and students celebrating Johann's work and the implications of his observations of the Königsberg bridges. Though he had not conceived of graph theory as a formal discipline, his careful mapping of paths and connections had planted the seeds for future generations of mathematicians. Johann read each letter with quiet satisfaction, understanding that knowledge was immortal not through fame, but through influence. Ideas, once shared and nurtured, became a living, evolving legacy. Johann gathered his apprentices for one final lesson in the workshop. The rooms smelled of polished wood, brass, and ink, familiar scents that had accompanied decades of invention. He guided them through the principles of motion, timing, and connectivity, demonstrating how clocks measured time and bridges reflected patterns of thought. The apprentices listened, taking in every detail, not just of mechanics, but of observation, patience, and reasoning. Johann realized that true immortality lay not in the machines themselves, but in the minds they inspired. As the sun dipped low, Johann walked along the riverbank. The bridges glowed faintly under lantern light, casting mirrored reflections in the water. He imagined the countless travelers, sailors, scholars, and students who had moved across the city, each influenced in subtle ways by his observations. Time, motion, and curiosity flowed through these people like a hidden current, connecting generations. Johann paused to admire the rhythm of the river, the order of the city, and the persistence of human thought, realizing that these patterns would endure long after his own life. Later that night, Johann sat alone by a single lantern in his workshop, gazing at his clocks. Each tick, each pendulum swing echoed with the rhythm of life and discovery. He thought of distant seas navigated with his devices, abstract ideas born from the bridges, and students now carrying his methods forward. Time, he realized, was both finite and infinite, measured by clocks, yet boundless in its effects. Even the smallest act of careful observation could ripple across centuries, shaping understanding and inspiring curiosity. Though Johann did not know it, centuries later, mathematicians would formalize the very problems he had pondered in Königsberg. The seven bridges problem would become a cornerstone of graph theory, connecting nodes and paths in ways he had glimpsed but not named. The ships guided by his clocks would inspire further innovations in navigation, helping explorers traverse oceans more safely. Johann could not foresee these events, yet in his careful observations, meticulous calculations, and patient teaching, he had laid the foundation for a legacy far larger than any one invention. That night, Königsberg was quiet. Snow settled gently on the bridges, reflecting lantern light in delicate patterns across the river. Johann sat by the window, the final clock ticking steadily beside him. He reflected on a life of observation, invention, and teaching, realizing that discovery was not a solitary act, but a dialogue between curiosity, the world, and future minds. In the quiet of the workshop, surrounded by ticking clocks and softly flowing rivers, he understood that the true measure of a life's work was the ripple it sent into the future. Johann lay in bed, listening to the gentle rhythm of his clocks. Outside, the city, the river, and the bridges all seemed to breathe in quiet harmony. He thought of the sailors who had trusted his inventions, the scholars inspired by his observations, and the students who would carry knowledge forward. Sleep embraced him, carrying him gently into dreams of movement, patterns, and time, where bridges and clocks intertwined in an endless, harmonious flow. His life had been a small piece of the infinite, a bridge between understanding and possibility. The next morning, the city of Königsberg awoke as always. Johann's workshop remained filled with clocks ticking in unison, reflecting a life devoted to precision, observation, and inspiration. Though he would no longer walk its streets, the bridges continued to span the river, and his ideas continued to ripple through time. His legacy, like the steady pendulum swing, like the paths across Königsberg, was timeless. And so, in the quiet, continuous rhythm of life, discovery, and curiosity, Johann's influence endured, a reminder that careful thought, patience, and imagination could transcend centuries, leaving patterns in the world that would never be forgotten. Königsberg continued its quiet rhythm after Johann's passing. The bridges arched over the Pregel like steadfast sentinels, and the river flowed beneath them, carrying with it the stories of centuries. Locals spoke in hushed admiration of the clocks Johann had made and the meticulous records he had left behind. In workshops, apprentices continued crafting gears and pendulums, their hands guided by his notes. The city seemed to hum with his presence, not in a literal sense, but through the rhythms, patterns, and lessons he had instilled. Knowledge, once observed and recorded, had become immortal. Decades later, letters recounting Johann's work reached mathematicians, navigators, and philosophers across Europe. Sailors wrote of the practical successes of clocks in navigation. Scholars wrote of patterns found in Königsberg's bridges. Johann's meticulous sketches and notes became a treasure trove for those studying both mechanics and abstract thought. Though he had lived quietly in one city by a river, his influence stretched across seas and borders. The bridges, the clocks, and the patterns he had noticed became metaphors for exploration, discovery, and the persistence of human ingenuity. In the 18th and 19th centuries, mathematicians formalized problems inspired by Johann's observations of Königsberg's bridges. The city's 7 bridges, once a practical puzzle of traversal, became the foundation for what would be called graph theory. Johann's ideas about nodes and connections, though never named in his lifetime, were recognized as visionary. Scholars praised the elegance of the problem, noting how a simple city could reveal profound truths about networks, paths, and the abstract connections that underpin human understanding. Johann had unwittingly contributed to a branch of mathematics that would shape the modern world. The clocks Johann had created were used in ships navigating treacherous waters, guiding sailors safely through the Baltic and beyond. Decades later, they inspired improvements in marine chronometers, enabling explorers to measure longitude with unprecedented accuracy. Johann's meticulous work bridged centuries, connecting a quiet workshop in Königsberg to the far reaches of the world. Every tick of his clocks, every refinement of a gear, became a tool for understanding, exploration, and survival. Philosophers and thinkers cited Johann's life as a testament to the power of observation, patience, and curiosity. His work demonstrated that the smallest details, whether the swing of a pendulum or the layout of a city, could yield insights into universal truths. Knowledge was shown to be a continuum. One mind's curiosity sparked another, forming a chain of ideas that transcended time. Johann had demonstrated that understanding the physical world and observing patterns in daily life were equally profound exercises in human thought. The apprentices Johann had mentored went on to become teachers, engineers, and navigators themselves. They carried his methods, insights, and philosophy to distant cities and ports. In workshops across Europe, clockmakers referenced his techniques, blending artistry with precision. Scholars discussed his methods of observation and abstraction in universities, connecting practical mechanics with theoretical mathematics. Johann's influence multiplied, flowing through generations like the Pregel itself, steady, persistent, and quietly transformative. The 7 bridges of Königsberg came to symbolize more than infrastructure. Mathematicians, philosophers, and writers invoked them as symbols of connection, complexity, and the hidden patterns in daily life. Johann's initial curiosity about movement and repetition had become a paradigm. Even ordinary structures could reveal extraordinary truths. His observations taught that the world, when viewed carefully and with patience, contained lessons waiting to be discovered, understood, and shared. In Königsberg, clocks continued to tick in workshops, homes, and towers. Each pendulum swing echoed Johann's patient diligence. Scholars examined the clocks, analyzing their mechanisms, while students marveled at the precision of each gear. The city itself seemed to move in rhythm with these devices, a living testament to the idea that human curiosity, observation, and care could leave enduring imprints on both thought and practical life. Johann's quiet work had become immortal, embedded in both the physical and intellectual landscapes of Europe. Visitors to Königsberg walked the bridges, unaware of the mathematical significance hidden within their layout. Yet Johann's influence was present in every calculation, every mechanical refinement, and every abstract theorem his life had inspired. The city's patterns, the river's flow, and the persistent rhythm of clocks all embodied his philosophy. That curiosity, careful observation, and patience could illuminate truths hidden in plain sight. Johann's life had become a bridge itself, connecting the past, present, and future through inquiry and understanding. As night fell, the city of Königsberg glimmered under lantern light. The river reflected stars, the bridges cast long shadows, and clocks ticked steadily across the city. Johann's influence endured, not in monuments or grand titles, but in the quiet, persistent rhythms of knowledge, observation, and discovery. Those who followed, inspired by his curiosity and patience, carried forward the spirit of inquiry. In sleep, in study, in travel, and in teaching, the echoes of Johann's work continued to resonate, a timeless reminder that careful thought, imagination, and wonder could ripple across centuries, shaping lives, ideas, and the very understanding of the world itself. The first light of dawn broke over Königsberg, gilding the river and its 7 bridges in a soft, golden hue. The city stirred slowly, merchants preparing their stalls, children laughing and chasing each other along cobblestones, and the river flowing steadily beneath the arches. Johann walked along the quays one final time, taking in the familiar sights, sounds, and smells of his hometown. The bridges, the flowing river, and the city itself seemed to embody the harmony of his life's work, a rhythm of observation, motion, and connection that transcended his own years. In his workshop, Johann ran his hands over the gears of his clocks, each tick a testament to decades of patient labor and meticulous care. He thought of sailors guided across seas, apprentices inspired by his teaching, and the abstract patterns that had emerged from the 7 bridges of Königsberg. Each discovery, no matter how small, had rippled outward into the world, touching lives and shaping thought. Johann realized that his true legacy lay not in objects or fame, but in the influence of ideas carried across time, a subtle yet profound gift to generations yet unborn. That evening, as lanterns illuminated the bridges, Johann pondered the deeper significance of his work. Clocks measured time, bridges suggested patterns, and observation revealed hidden connections. He understood that human curiosity, patience, and reasoning were capable of unveiling truths that stretched far beyond the physical world. Life itself could be mapped, measured, and contemplated, but always with the understanding that mystery remained. Each moment, each motion, and each thought was part of a larger, interconnected rhythm, one that endured long after any individual had passed. Johann's apprentices gathered by his side, their eyes reflecting a mix of admiration, curiosity, and quiet reverence. He reminded them to approach life with patience, to observe carefully, to question relentlessly, and to share knowledge freely. The young minds listened intently, understanding that their work would carry forward the principles he had lived by. Johann realized that in teaching, in nurturing curiosity, and in fostering careful observation, he had created a legacy that would outlast any clock, bridge, or city, embedding itself in the minds and hearts of those who followed. Night fell over Königsberg, and the city glimmered under a canopy of stars. The bridges reflected perfectly in the river, creating patterns that seemed infinite. Johann sat quietly by his window, watching the gentle ripples and the lantern lights. He reflected on how the smallest observations, a pendulum's swing, a bridge's arch, could ripple across time to influence thought, navigation, and mathematics. He smiled, knowing that the rhythm of discovery was eternal, like the ticking of a perfectly calibrated clock or the flow of the river beneath the bridges. Even in his final years, letters continued to arrive, describing voyages guided by his clocks, abstract problems inspired by his bridge observations, and new generations of thinkers applying his methods. Johann read each one with quiet satisfaction, realizing that influence was not measured in immediate recognition, but in the persistent echo of ideas. The 7 bridges of Königsberg, once a practical curiosity, had become a symbol of intellectual exploration, connecting not just islands, but centuries of thought, imagination, and discovery. One cold winter night, Johann took his last walk across the bridges. Snow had fallen lightly, dusting the city in white, and the river reflected the stars above. Each step resonated with memory of apprentices, of sailors, of letters, and of the countless moments of quiet observation in his workshop. He realized that life, like the river, flows steadily, and that even a single mind's curiosity could set in motion waves that travel far beyond the present. The bridges and river were eternal, a living testament to the patterns and rhythms of human endeavor. Back in his workshop, Johann wound his final clock. Its pendulum swung steadily, echoing the timeless rhythm of life. The motion was both mechanical and symbolic, a reminder that each act of observation, each careful decision, and each pursuit of understanding contributed to a greater whole. He reflected on how invention, teaching, and curiosity were intertwined, like the gears of his clocks or the paths across Königsberg's bridges, and how each ripple of effort could endure far beyond a single lifetime. That night, Johann lay in bed, listening to the soft, steady ticking of the clocks around him. Outside, the river whispered beneath the bridges, the city slept, and stars twinkled above. He felt the harmony of life, knowledge and discovery flowing through him and beyond him, into the apprentices, scholars and thinkers who would continue to explore and understand. Sleep embraced him, carrying him into a realm where time, motion, and curiosity intertwined infinitely. The rhythm of his life had become part of the eternal pulse of knowledge itself. Though Johann would no longer walk the streets of Königsberg, the bridges remained, the clocks continued to tick, and his observations lived on in letters, publications, and minds across centuries. Sailors navigated oceans, mathematicians formalized graphs, and philosophers reflected on patterns in life, motion, and human endeavor, all influenced in subtle and profound ways by the quiet work of a clockmaker who had observed carefully, thought deeply, and shared generously. Johann's life had become a bridge, connecting time, knowledge, and curiosity, reminding the world that even the smallest acts of observation could leave ripples that echo through eternity.